Hillary Clinton's beaver, Elmo and skinny jeans, millennial madness, and more. All next on The Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everybody. I'm Dr. Duke, and thank you for joining us today. As always, I am joined by Katie Petrick of The Healthy Republic for the countdown, top stories of the day for our feature where we dissect the news. Katie, what do you got today?
We have a jam-packed week, so we got to get rolling very quickly. Last week, at the end of the school, or at the beginning of the school day on Friday, Santa Fe High School in Texas unfortunately had another school shooting, and we lost 10 lives there. But it already seems we're a week later, and it's very different from what we had with the Parkland shooting. We are not going to say the name of the shooter because that's exactly the attention he wants. But we see that what's happening is kids don't know how to handle rejection, and they're taking it out then, obviously, in these very unhealthy and tragic ways. And so the interesting story that came out after is the fact that former Education Secretary Arne Duncan actually says that Americans should boycott school. This was sparked after a tweet was put out by an Assistant Secretary of Education, also under President Obama, Peter Cunningham, who said, maybe it's time for America's 50 million school parents to simply pull their kids out of school until we have better gun laws. And Arne Duncan responded saying, this is brilliant and tragically necessary. What if no children went to school until gun laws change to keep them safe? My family is all in if we can do this at scale. Parents, will you please join us?
Well, first of all, if 50 million school kids walked out of school, the teachers would immediately strike and demand more money. I can guarantee you that, right? More money for empty classrooms. Well, there's so much wrong with this. I mean, Arne Duncan is the same guy who the most disastrous reign over a Department of Education since 1979. Arne Duncan is the least qualified person to ever hold that position. He gave us Common Core. He gave us standardized testing. He lowered overall performance. The new NAEP scores are out. Only 35% of kids in American 8th graders do math at an 8th grade level. Only 37% of 8th graders can read at an 8th grade level. This is the Department of Education that Arne Duncan left us. This is the same Arne Duncan who said, if you don't want your kids exposed to transgenderism in middle school, you can't opt them out. If you don't want your kids to take these meaningless high-stakes standardized tests, you cannot opt them out. If you want your kids not to learn about homosexual marriage or global warming in biology class or to have their gym classes hijacked by tutorials on using condoms, you can't opt your kids out. Now, because of the Second Amendment, Arne Duncan is okay with opting 50 million American school kids out. I say call his bluff, Arne. There's no possible way those kids could learn worse at home. They'll be safer, Arne, at home. You got that exactly right. Arne Duncan also acknowledges something else that we have to remind you of. Arne Duncan just acknowledged that there is nothing he can do to protect your kids. There's nothing the schools can do to protect your kids because this is not a gun issue. It's not an issue of safety in terms of the idea that you're going to provide a huge government school facility, not put metal detectors, not have any security on them, and keep going after kids, right? Keep letting apparently gym coaches bully kids. Keep treating kids like outcasts. Keep teaching kids that they've got white privilege, therefore they should be knocked down a peg. Keep discouraging kids from playing with other children. Ban kickball and all competitive sports. Give kids participation level medals just for showing up, and then ultimately confront them with one reality in the course of their life that goes against what they think they want, and watch what happens. Arne Duncan, you are exactly right. The schools are an ever-loving mess. Guns have almost nothing to do with it. But if this is what it takes to get you to realize, and the final irony, Arne Duncan was the superintendent of public schools in Chicago, which has the strictest gun laws almost in the country, right? And some of the worst gun violence in the country. And Arne Duncan, you got a quote from me about Arne Duncan, right? Lay this on the moms and dads at home.
So Arne Duncan is currently working full-time in Chicago, and he says, I thought my greatest failure when I ran Chicago public schools was the number of our students who died under my watch, who were killed. So this is not a new issue by any stretch. So
the greatest failure under his watch was something he had no control over, right? He had no control over kids getting hit by cars or kids being victims of drive-by shootings. There's nothing Arne Duncan could have done to protect that. What Arne Duncan could have done is teach Chicago school kids how to read. Didn't do it. What Arne Duncan could have done is insist that middle and high school kids can do math. Didn't do it. What Arne Duncan could have done is focus the Chicago schools on education, not on ideology and sociology. But he did not do that. If the biggest worry that Arne Duncan has is that somebody is going to die randomly, then he ought to check himself off the planet. The one thing you were put in charge of, Arne Duncan, was educating our kids, and you didn't do it. And so you are contributing to the ignorance that's going to grow up and shoot more people. Let's boycott Arne Duncan. How about that? I mean, if 50 million American school kids walk out, they should be walking out for the fact that their futures are being jeopardized by a weak education, that their careers, their ability to find a job, to support their own kids one day is being jeopardized by this garbage education they're getting in the public schools. If you're not worried about that, and this is the only thing that's going to get you to boycott the public schools, then for the duration of this boycott, I will be anti-gun, if only to get the kids out of the public schools. If that's what I have to do to get kids out of these rotten, failed public schools, then for the duration of time that they're on strike, I'll rally to their cause, in name only, which makes me a good rhino. So I'll do it there, but we'll make sure once the kids are out, then we can begin to think of a new paradigm to educate our kids.
Yeah, the great irony, though, you didn't point out is that Arne Duncan at the same time was the same person who said that he wants our schools to be open, 12,
24/7
13,
hours
14
a
hours
day.
a day. This should be a community.
This is the same Arne Duncan that says our schools have to, not the family home or the local community government, not the local churches. We want the public schools, our government schools, to be open 12, 13, 14 hours a day, 365 days a year. We want the schools to become the centers of the community, right? And if they do become the centers of the community, that means they are doing everything else but educating your kids.
These people did not come here to see you. They came to see me, right? Tell her.
In our next story, we have also happening this week on The Politician That Doesn't End. Sock puppet Hillary Clinton was the commencement speaker at Yale, and she pulled out a Russian hat and put it on her head to mock President Trump, in which I guess putting kind of goofy hats on is part of Yale's tradition. And at one point she says, if you can't beat them, join them.
Yeah, I want you to take a good look at that picture that you got up on the screen there. I got to start with this. So Hillary Clinton has a Russian beaver hat on her head. So Hillary Clinton has a beaver on her head, and Huma Abedin is apparently nowhere to be found. That right there is a revelation in and of itself, number one. Number two, this just galls me to no end. This is the most privileged, powerful woman in the history of the United States. No woman in the long history of the United States has had more authority, more power, more perks, more privilege, more shady deals than Hillary Clinton. She goes all over the world getting paid hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to lecture the world about American sexism, despite handing her all that privilege. She has had every office that she wanted in this United States, except president, for no other reason than she was female and the wife of Bill Clinton. And yet she is now whining that it is sexism that's held her down. Let me be the first one to say, if misogyny is what stopped Hillary Clinton from being president, but gave her every other unqualified job that she's had, then I'd like to volunteer for a steady course of misandry. You go ahead and be a man-hater if it gives me every stupid job I'm not qualified for, tens of millions of dollars of giving speeches at places like Yale, getting medals from Harvard for having lost a presidential campaign. The fact that you're getting a Harvard medal for having lost a presidential campaign, the fact that you're giving a commencement speech to Yale students, the fact that the New York Times, all these news medias, every word you say, they're printing it. You're being invited to speeches all across the globe. This is the damnedest form of oppression I've ever seen. Everything you want, dead bodies in your closet that nobody's looked out, a husband whose bimbo eruptions you managed, a questionable legal life, a failed political career, and you keep getting 24/7 media coverage, tens of millions of dollars thrown your way, all for losing an election. That's the damnedest kind of anti-feminism I've ever seen in my benighted male life.
Okay, so speaking of people who kind of have failed but are still getting all these great deals, we have the Obamas who have inked a Netflix deal. So starting in 2019 at the earliest, they will be doing a multi-year deal with Netflix, and they're going to have all sorts of different shows. And according to Michelle Obama, Netflix's unparalleled service is a natural fit for the kinds of stories we want to share, and we look forward to starting this exciting new partnership. Now, I got a preview of some of the first shows that they're going to be putting out. And the first release is going to be called Barack Your Body. It's an 8-week, or I guess it could take 8 years, program to get yourself to fit into those mom jeans. But it's not just about fitness. There's going to be a bonus meal plan provided by Michelle. And the food is inedible, so it'll speed up the process to meet your desired goals. There is a spoiler here because I actually did do this program already, and I was told I could keep doing what I've always done, and that it would always be there and nothing would have to change. There weren't any cost increases in my lifestyle or anything, but then my lifestyle, the costs increased, and I guess now I'm not going to be fitting into my mom jeans. So
what you're saying is if you like your trainer, you can't keep your trainer.
That's what I'm saying. That's what happened to me, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Obama on Netflix is just predictable. They ought to just go right to what's going to end up happening. Give him Jimmy Kimmel's spot. on late night TV. He'll cry a little bit more, but he will be at least half as amusing. So the Obamas now have inked it. They've walked like Hillary Clinton. Again, the hallmark of the Obama presidency is everybody who didn't like him because they were racist. Just like everybody who didn't support or vote for Hillary Clinton is a sexist. So I would make respectfully the same comment about Obama and his wife. Their qualification for the job of president was non-existent. A community activist, a adjunct professor of the Constitution at Harvard University, where evidently one of the requirements of that course was never to have read it, because clearly Obama hadn't. Gets him to a Saul Alinsky community organizer job where he was paid well to do what exactly except agitate. From that, he spends a handful of months in the U.S. Senate, and then he's President Barack Obama. Well, it's not surprising. Don't just give him a bunch of Netflix series. Make him the president of Netflix, right? He couldn't possibly do any less than he did as president of the United States. And as far as mom jeans go, we shouldn't be too hard on mom jeans. They got the nice elastic around the waistband. They give you those narrow little boy hips that are so fashionable among the. I mean, if he keeps up at this, we're going to see Obama in skinny jeans next, and maybe a little man bun, and grow the hair out a little bit.
The next fashion
show, exactly right.
I know there's going to be a show called Michelle Madness, and that said it's going to be a journey through the intricacies, playing second fiddle to her husband's basketball brackets. So I look forward to seeing that one as well. We'll see what happens.
Awesome.
All right, so moving on to the current president, we have President Trump, who announced that he has plans to cut some federal funding from Planned Parenthood. He thinks he's found a way to do it. And so Title X, which is the family planning program, is being evaluated. And there's 3 things that they're looking to have change and have happen. Number 1 is what will happen is you have to be physically separate from those that perform abortion to be able to get this funding. That they're going to try to eliminate the requirement that women with unintended pregnancies be counseled on their full range of reproductive options, and to ban abortion referrals. So Planned Parenthood would most certainly lose funding under these new proposed changes. What's going to be interesting is even though they would be losing all this funding, they don't have to worry too much, because the WNBA actually just announced that they're going to be donating $5 from every ticket sale to one of these 6 organizations that they support, and Planned Parenthood, of course, is one of them.
Well, what I find very interesting about that is the WNBA is supporting this, right? Nice to know another lesbian organization is on board with Planned Parenthood, number 1. Number 2, $5 per ticket. I didn't realize it cost $5 to get into the WNBA. Do people actually pay that? Is that one of those things that people this is one of those things where, like, Quick Trip does a promotion, buy 2 gallons of gas, you get a WNBA ticket? I mean, does anybody actually really pay money to go see the WNBA? I'm perplexed about this.
I honestly didn't know WNBA was still going on.
Right, I didn't either. I thought it was like the WWE. I didn't realize. It had frozen up. So I don't think we're in danger of too many funds heading from the WNBA to Planned Parenthood. But I go back and say, I think that's right. There are so many liberals who think that Planned Parenthood is God's gift to government. It's the same thing with Sesame Street, for goodness sake. National Public Radio. I mean, Sesame Street alone could fund that show every year. Why are we spending government taxpayer money on it? Let Big Bird pay for it. Big Bird and all those Muppets in the barrio.
Are you talking about Lisa Leslie?
Oh, there you go. All those Muppets in the barrio, right? They make big bank. I'm telling you, Oscar the Grouch, he's flush. These guys are loaded. Elmo, my God, Elmo can buy and sell you. Elmo could buy and sell the WNBA 6 times over. Why not just do a Planned Parenthood voluntary tax on Elmo and then that'd make a lot more money than the WNBA. So my view of all of this is that the liberals who love this program so much, all these Hollywood elites that have to have it, all of these rich mega donors who think that it is wonderful, the Nancy Pelosi's of the world, just pay for it. $500 million spread across all the liberal pinheads in this world, in this country, you would be able to buy, you could fund Planned Parenthood 10 times that amount. 5 million, 500 million, 500 million if you want to keep it going. If what you want to do is bring women's reproductive health free to everybody, just kick in make there be a Hollywood movie payroll tax. Every big Hollywood actor who signs a contract, 5% goes to Planned Parenthood. If the WNBA can do it, and God knows they're not flush with money, you can do it. And then all of a sudden we can keep that tax money for, responsible things like building roads.
Speaking of responsible, we have a story about the most irresponsible person. This next story, the final story here, just I think summarizes everything that is 2018. We have a New York family, a set of parents from New York who are suing their 30-year-old son for the most millennial thing ever, and it's because he will not leave the nest. Michael Rotundo is the son, was told by mom and dad on February 2nd, hey, we're giving you 2 weeks, son, you're 30 years old, it's time to move out. And of course, he said no. So after months of trying to get him to leave, they finally said, okay, we're suing you, we're taking you to court. And he actually, the parents were ruled in favor of, yeah, bye-bye, you have to go. But it's kind of funny because what Michael says is...
Let me just understand, because I hear you on your parents giving you notices, the fact that you were on national television talking about moving out of your parents' house, you tell me you want to move out of your parents' house. Why don't you just move out of your parents' house, like tomorrow?
I don't have the means to do that tomorrow.
Okay.
So,
do you have a job?
No.
Are you trying to get a job? Because I read that one of the things your parents asked of you, there are jobs available even for those with a poor work history like you. Get one, you have to work. Are you working on that?
I have plans to be able to provide myself with the income I need to support myself, but it's not something that's going to come together tomorrow.
Is that Rotundo right there, the guy looking like a dropout from the cast of Jesus Christ Superstar? Is that the fellow on the left? So, okay, all right. So the real question about all of this, I mean, there's so many obvious points to make. Let's start with a few of them. He's 30 years old and still living in his parents' house. The fact that they are evicting him through the courts now tells you that this is an epic parent failure, right?
Epic.
Any parent worth of salt would have, at age 19, changed the locks on the door and let the kid go migrate somewhere.
They should have cheating boyfriend him. What they should have done...
Cheating boyfriended him.
Throw all of his belongings out on the front lawn, change the locks, and just yell profanity out at him as he tries to come back in the door.
Well, maybe they're unaware of the whole relationship dynamic because this guy's never had a date. I'm telling you that
Clearly.
right now. Not one that's not digital anyway. And so with this guy, the obvious question that I have here, that beyond all the jokes about millennials, beyond all the jokes about bad parenting, beyond the jokes, the endless jokes the litigation in this whole thing, how's he paying his lawyer? That's what I want to know. I can't think. Is there a pro bono service for deadbeat sons?
Yeah, that's a good question.
How are you paying this guy? Hey, lawyer, you do realize that Michael Rotundo has nothing. He's about to be thrown out on his arse with nothing. He can't pay you. Dollars to donuts. He's going to find a federal judge somewhere by way of appeal who will not only require the boy to be allowed to live there further, but will force the parents to pay attorney fees. I'm telling you, no lawyer is that dumb to work for a client like this unless he's got something up his sleeve.
And if anyone is doubting that he has nothing, he actually came out and he clearly doesn't have a job. He says, I've never been expected to contribute to household expenses or assisted with chores and the maintenance of the premises, and claims that this is simply a component of his living agreement.
I have never been required. This goes back to the parents, right? I've lived here for 30 years, and I've never had to do chores. Let that sink in. I've never had to do chores. I've never had to contribute one dime to the maintenance or the upkeep or the supplying of the household. I have no responsibilities, ethical, moral, material, or physical, for any aspect of the house. I just get to live here. My God, he's a poster child for the Democratic Party. This guy is got to be the new pajama boy. Take this guy, give him a cup of cocoa and a twill pattern flannel onesie, right, with glasses. And just make him the focus of the Obama campaign for Netflix. The first Netflix show that Barack Obama should do in his skinny mom jeans is this one. Yeah. Talk to this poor, victimized person, how evil his family is, how we need a head tax, right? We need greater taxation for homeowners to be able to pay for their vagrant children to live with them longer. That's how you handle this. That's the next big thing.
Yeah, he'll move to Seattle. Okay, so we do have a little bit of time here. We are going to do a viewer question. So, Carly from Minnesota wants to know, Dr. Duke and Katie. Thank you, Carly. Which do you find more annoying, the Laurel-Yanni debate or the royal wedding with Harry and Meghan?
Well, I'm embarrassed to say that I have only the vaguest understanding of what Laurel and Yanni is, and you can correct me because you're a millennial, spends all her time online, and lives with your parents. So, Laurel versus Yanni, I assume
here, that's... Just listen.
You got it?
See, unlike you, I come prepared to things.
All right.
Here we go.
Let's hear it.
Laurel, 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 Laurel.
To be honest with you, heard the word Laurel again and again and again.
There you go. That's what it is. So the big debate is the the voice, is it saying Laurel or is it saying Yanni? And so it depends on apparently the pitch. Now, when I first heard it, I said Laurel, okay? Then I heard it a different time, and it said Yanni. It all, see, this is why.
Play it again. I want to see if I hear like Yanni this time.
Okay.
Laurel. Laurel.
Well, I heard it different times. So this is why. Which is more annoying, this or the royal wedding?
My producer just told us we're both morons. It's Yanni.
Here's the beauty of it. If you hear Laurel, it means you're more likely to be a male, and if you hear Yanni, you're more likely to be a female.
Well, he heard Yanni. He heard Yanni, which is par for the course. If there ever was a case to be made for transgenderism, but Mike's a whole other issue.
There it is.
Yanni versus Laurel. All I heard was Laurel. But if you ask me in retrospect which one bothers me more, it is much, much more the royal wedding. Why in the world is American TV spending hours and hours on this when our entire ethos as a culture is wealth envy, right? The slow march of socialism through our institutions, this weird notion of equity and social justice. At the very least, the royal family is a microaggression, right?
All right, Carly, I hope that answers your question.
Carly.
If you have a question for the Dr. Duke Show, make sure you send us an email at askduke@fpeusa.org. And after you're done watching this, make sure you go to Facebook, give us a nice thumbs up if you want to follow us on Twitter. And if you want to listen to the podcast version, because why wouldn't you want to hear these sweet voices, make sure you go over to SoundCloud and iTunes.
Hi, everybody. I am really, really excited to talk to my next guest, Kyle Mann, editor-in-chief of the Babylon Bee and co-author of, quote, How to Be a Perfect Christian, Your Comprehensive Guide to Living Flawlessly, Flawless Spiritual Living, unquote. Kyle, some great stuff there. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You have created the Babylon Bee, which is just an incredibly fantastic satirical site. In this really weird modern age we live in of undereducating kids, it is staggering to me how many kids and people, adults, don't get satire. It seems to go right past them. Your Babylon Bee is a fantastic website for this. Talk a little bit about where you got the idea from and what your objectives are.
Yeah, my friend Adam Ford actually launched the site a couple years ago, and I joined pretty much right away in that first week. And it was kind of something where we had a lot of satire and a lot of comedy out there that was making all of these points in a hilarious way, but most of them were done from kind of a secular perspective. And so we wanted to introduce something that would do some satire with a purpose, with a point, hopefully make people laugh, make people think after they're finished laughing, all from kind of a Christian worldview, whether that's talking about the wider secular culture or more church culture and theology, those kinds of topics.
I actually think what you guys do is funnier than most of what they do at The Onion, right, which is the sort of default satirical publication this way. I got to ask, is the Babylon Bee, is that a commentary on the book of Isaiah and this idea that God was going to, for all those people who have wandered away from the truth, God was going to send his bees from the north to sting them back into righteousness? Is there a parallel there?
I don't know if it was that deep, but definitely this idea that we're as believers, living in the world, kind of this wider world that's increasingly secular. A lot of times it does feel like we're living in Babylon and we're in exile until we finally make it to our true home.
How does it feel? I mean, you must have lots of stories to tell. You guys write some devastating, I think, but very straight-faced and wry, but very devastating satires. Do you find that a lot of people misunderstand you? Is it mostly the left who's reacting to what you're saying, or is it Christians, too, that are kind of falling for the seeming literalacy of everything?
Yeah, people who misunderstand or don't appreciate the satire come from all sides, whether that's the left or the right or the middle. It kind of, whenever somebody's own sacred cow gets gored, that's when they get upset or or mistake it because it's something that they really want to be true, or really they're kind of predisposed to believe something, and so then they'll share it thinking it's real or won't appreciate the satire or whatever.
What kind of responses do you get? Do people write you nasty notes? Do they threaten to boycott you? What kind of especially when you've got people who are theoretically on our side completely misunderstanding what you're saying? What kinds of ways do they try to get your attention to let you know they're unhappy?
Oh, it's all the normal stuff. It's emails. People will let us know in the comments if they don't like a particular angle or they think something's or they don't understand. They think something's real. They don't understand that it's satire. So you see it in the comments. You'll see it in on Twitter, Facebook, email. You know, we get all the usual avenues.
Give us an example, I mean, of one story that you did recently that you thought really had a big reaction, that people really immediately were paying attention to and forwarding. Give us an example of one story of yours that you think went viral.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it depends. It's mostly every day, or, you know, at least we hope every day, we get ones that are kind of getting spread far and wide, you know, even beyond our Christian culture. You know, even beyond that kind of little circle that we're sharing in. You know, we did one yesterday where we said that the Obamas were going to share all their profits. They're going to donate all their profits from their new Netflix deal to combating wealth inequality. You know, so just kind of making fun of this idea that, you know, people who campaign on wealth inequality and talking about being for the common man, you know, just being just absolute multimillionaires after a few years in public service. You know, so that one is one where it kind of took off right away and started getting shared beyond our own circles, you know, and kind of got out of our control pretty quickly.
And I'll bet you there are people on the left who are going to use that from now for the next 20 years to brag about how selfless the Obamas are, right?
Yeah, I'm sure Snopes is already working on a fact check for us.
I love the one you had up today with a picture of Nancy Pelosi, in which the Democrat Party is beginning to worry that by promoting abortion so much, they're killing future donors. All right, I mean, that one made me laugh out loud, because it's two major constituencies: the pro-abort faction of the Democrat Party and the give us all your money faction of the Democrat Party, which is the same faction, really, and how they're at odds with themselves. Many people have pointed out before that Democrat abortion laws are actually predominantly aborting more Democrat babies. But I thought that was a very funny way you handled that and showed both sides of that angle there.
Yeah, you know, abortion is a topic that we go after pretty regularly, and that's one that, you know, we won't hold back at all when we're talking about Planned Parenthood and abortion. So that's something we go after all the time.
Do you ever get accused of lying? People, again, who don't get the satire, is lying something that you get? I would imagine there would be some angry liberal voices with no senses of humor that see you as just kind of a lying site. Are people trying to shut you down? Is Facebook or Twitter trying to come after you for fake news?
You know, we did have that one issue where we posted the article saying that CNN had purchased an industrial-sized washing machine to spin the news, and it, you know, kind of a pretty silly piece, and Snopes fact-checked it, and then Facebook fed off of Snopes' fact-check and warned us and started warning our readers, you know, that we were sharing fake news. And so that was concerning for us. Obviously, we don't want to really be beholden to the worldviews of the people who run Facebook or Google or Twitter, you know, so that was concerning. Facebook did come out and say it was a mistake and apologize, you know, after it kind of blew up all over the internet and people were getting upset about it. So, you know, but we don't really know if that's something that's going to pop up in the future or not, but it's definitely a concern for us.
I was thinking you ought to do at some point a spoof of Snopes, this organization that considers itself a fact checker that's stacked top to bottom with radical liberal progressive voices, right? There's not a single non-progressive investigating the internet, and we wonder why certain things get flagged and certain don't.
Yeah, we've done a couple of things on Snopes. You know, I think after that happened, we said that Snopes rated us the most reliable news source on the internet. Yeah, and I think just a few minutes ago we published one on PolitiFact saying that they just went ahead and said everything that Donald Trump ever has said or will say in the future is a lie. You know, so, you know, no matter how small it is, and so, you know, we're always trying to kind of go after that. You know, that there's this kind of liberal elite that is controlling a lot of what we see on the internet.
Well, let's move on to your book now, your new book, How to Be a Perfect Christian. Some of your chapters include, and these titles just get me laughing too, joining the right church, worshiping like a pro, serving in church without ever lifting a finger, and looking really spiritual online. I'm disappointed as a longtime Christian, a modern Christian. Where was the chapter on embracing your inner gay Jesus? I mean, where is that? How can you have a comprehensive guide to being a good Christian without embracing the gay lifestyle of the Savior?
Well, you need to read the chapter on believing all the right things. But, you know, we have a chapter on with a systematic theology, and that would kind of be encompassed because we say in there, you know, if Yeah, that you're amazing and you're special, and God would never say anything that you would personally disagree with. So that would kind of fall under that umbrella.
Well, too, I think we must always remember as we wind down here that Jesus himself had quite a sarcastic streak, didn't he? The way he would turn on his own disciples. Do you not yourselves understand? I like to think that Jesus would have enjoyed your sense of humor immensely than the frustration that comes from dealing with people. Kyle, tell everybody, all our listeners, where can they find your website and how do they buy your book?
Yeah, our website is babylonb.com, and our book is kind of plastered all over that page, and you can buy the book on Amazon, at local bookstores, wherever books are sold.
Kyle Mann, editor-in-chief of the Babylon Bee and co-author of How to Be a Perfect Christian. It has been a great, great pleasure to speak with you. Keep up the good work.
In this corner, your pugilistic pundit, the Duke of Diplomacy, the Professor of Patriotism, the Doctor of Domestic Tranquility.
This is Right Makes Might with Dr. Duke.
Well, as always happens, Jesus is bad and belongs out of the public sphere unless he's being appropriated by liberals for liberal purposes. So when a pastor stands up and prays with Trump, he should be defrocked for supporting racism and genocide. But when William Barber, a progressive African-American evangelical preacher, comes out and makes the argument that if Jesus were alive today, he would be for abortion, which is now the new black is white, right? The new really Orwellian doublespeak of our age is that pro-life people are actually opposed to life, and pro-choice people are actually, wait for it, pro-life. William Barber came out and said that if Jesus were alive today, he would be pro-abortion and pro-single-payer health care. And now, this isn't alarming. This is an old tactic of the left. This is very Alinskyite, right? Religion is bad when I do it, when liberals do it, and turn Jesus into a card-carrying communist, then religion is acceptable. But the problem I want to talk about is 501c3 status. So many conservative, traditional pastors I know refuse to talk politics because, the government's going to come in and take away their 501c3. Radicalized left-wing African-American pastors can pretty much politicize anything. They can talk about Obama in religious terms. They can use the gospel to make all sorts of progressive points. They can co-opt Jesus for any political debate that they want. Nobody ever comes after their 501c3. In other words, guys, on our side of the divide, real Christians who don't politicize Christ, people who recognize that by his every act in the Gospels, Christ eschewed politics. When hit with a political question, do we pay our taxes? Christ said, whose picture is it? Give it to him, right? Avoided political tribalism at every cost. The fact that so many minority pastors are able to radically politicize their church in the pulpit and use Jesus as a tool for that pretty much means if those who know better, those who have a better understanding of Scripture, and those who try to teach an authentic Christ, if they spoke the same way about political issues, they'd have to be left alone too. So the takeaway of all of this from William Barber is that if they're going to turn Jesus into a left-wing acolyte, if they're going to turn Jesus into a communist, it is not being political to point out that he's not. 501c3 be damned. And that does it for us this week. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke, and we will see you next time.